Good afternoon, all of you. I welcome you all to the online lecture series as part of OUCIP Lecture series. It is the 8th lecture. The first lecture was delivered by Professor C.R. Vishweshwar Rao sir, and in continuation to the lecture series, today we have this lecture. This is 8th lecture by Professor R.K. Dhawan. Today, Professor R.K. Dhawan is going to talk on folk literature and its relevance in modern context, the resurgence of contemporary Indian drama. Folklore has an ancient roots and it offers a rich legacy to us in the present times. There is an urgent need to reevaluate this segment of literature. I'm sure Professor R.K. Dhawan, from his vast experience, and he will be enlightening the teachers, the lecturers, the young scholars, not only from English literature, from different disciplines. Talking about Professor R.K. Dhawan, retired as Professor of English from the University of Delhi. He received many awards and fellowships. He has been conducting so many conferences, not only India. He has collaborated with national and international academic organizations, associations, many lecturers as part of their CAS. They have been benefited by his academic ventures, conferences, and also his literary journals like the Commonwealth Review and Indo-American Review. In fact, Professor Dhawan, at present, he is the president of Indian Society for Commonwealth Studies, for which Professor C.R. Vishweshwar Rao sir is the chairman. Talking about Dhawan's contribution in Indian academia, in literature, and in fact, it requires a lot of volumes and pages because of his relentless efforts to continue the lectures, organizing seminars and conferences. Professor R.K. Dhawan was a British Council scholar at Oxford University, Australian Board Visiting Scholar at Sydney, Sastry Fellow at Toronto University, Canada, and he was a keynote speaker at an international conference, Turin University, Italy. He has delivered lectures at various universities in India and abroad. He brings out 2 literary journals like the Commonwealth Review and Indo-American Review. We, the center, the OUCIP, we have a close association with Indian Society for Commonwealth Studies because we got the opportunity of collaboration with them many times. Really, I convey my heartfelt gratitude and a thankfulness to Professor R.K. Dhawan sir for accepting my invitation to deliver a lecture and to spare his valuable time. Now, may I invite Professor R.K. Dhawan to deliver his lecture. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor, for your kind words. Good afternoon, everybody. Before I begin my talk, let me thank OUCIP Director Dr. Konda Nageshwar Rao and his team for launching this wonderful lecture series at a time when it is not possible to physically come together. The lecture series is like an oasis in the desert. The title of my talk is Folk Literature and its Relevance in Modern Context, the Resurgence of Contemporary Indian Drama. So I begin my talk. Folk literature has ancient roots and offers a rich legacy to us in the present times. There's an urgent need to re-evaluate this segment of literature, for technology has seemingly overtaken its popularity and relegated it to the background. My talk today is in three parts: origin and growth of the folklore, its resurgence in the 20th century Indian drama, and the evolution of folk type street theatre, Tamasha Plays, in the recent years. During the course of my talk, I will be discussing some important plays which have been influenced by folk theatre. These are Vijay Tendulkar's Ghashiram Kotwal, Badal Sircar's Evam Indrajit, and Mohan Rakesh's Halfway House, Adhe, adhure. What is folklore? In simple terms, folklore is a combination of the words folk and lore. The former refers to a community of people, and the latter comes from the Old English lar, which means knowledge. In brief, folklore refers to a specific community and its way of life in the olden days. Folk literature reflects the religious, social, and political picture of the olden times. Historically speaking, it was at the end of the 18th century that interest in folk poetry and legends began. The early study and research began with the efforts of the British scholars in India, with the establishment of the Royal Society of Bengal in 1774. These scholars highlighted the importance of folk literature, especially folk theatre. It received fillip in the 20th century when playwrights like Girish, Karnad, Vijay Tendulkar, Badal Sircar, and Mohan Rakesh resolved to rejuvenate Indian drama by blending folk and mythical themes with day-to-day issues. These playwrights changed the face of Indian drama by switching over to the form and pattern of folk theatre. What was the literary scene in India after independence? In the 70s and 80s, that was a time of euphoria for Indians. It was a time when people were reveling, having got freedom from the Britishers. It was a time when the drama of protest of the progressive writers had no relevance to the public. In 1930s, 40s, progressive drama made great strides, and we had some very important writers then. But after independence, it was the time of fiction. It was a time when the drama of protest and progressive writers had no relevance for the public. People shifted their attention from political to internal issues being faced by the common people. Many novelists emerged on the scene and wrote about feminist and social issues confronting the nation. Kamala Markandeya, Anita Desai, Ruth Chawla, and Nayantara Sehgal dealt with the women's problems and human relationships in their fiction. It was indeed an era of fiction writing. While fiction flourished, the drama was a plant of poor growth. For playwrights, it was a matter of serious concern. They pondered over a vital question: how to draw upon various trends in the traditional theatre and revitalize Indian drama. How to make drama relevant for the Indian audience. It was a time for the playwrights to find ways and means to capture the imagination of the people. They had to find themes that would appeal to the middle class Indians sitting fast on the national scene. Many of them drew heavily upon the rich resources of the native folk theatre. Vijay Tendulkar and Girish Karnad changed the form and pattern of Indian drama by adopting the tradition of Marathi art form known as Tamasha. What is the meaning of Tamasha? Tamasha is a Persian word which means fun or entertainment. There are two types of Tamasha: Dholki Bari and Sangeet Bari. The first one is serious, but the second one contains songs, dance, and music. Tamasha was a mobile theater that went to different regions of Maharashtra to stage shows. This art form was often performed by low caste communities and also watched by them. The performances were presented during the festivals. We have even now around Dussehra and Diwali, many groups, they move from place to place near the Ramlila and these plays had popular appeal as these were dominated by women and children. Sometimes these were very vulgar with double meaning. That is why the villagers felt so excited and titillated watching them. Vijay Tendulkar's Ghashiram Kotwal is the best example of a play that belongs to the folk type Tamasha. In this play, Tendulkar has used a variety of new theatre forms such as mime, dance, music, and dialogue in verse, which are the important features of folk theatre. The following blending of traditional Marathi theatre with folk theatre makes the play a masterpiece of Indian drama. Let us discuss the play in some detail. The play has a musical opening with a hymn glorifying God, Ganpati. We find there are a number of priests who are singing and performing the Ganesh Puja. This is the opening scene and there's a lot of dance and music. There are 12 men standing in a row singing praises of Ganpati. Interestingly enough, Ganpati is physically present amongst them. The Ganpati dances with all other men. The Brahmins of Pune bow to him, swaying rhythmically to and fro. They sing as a chorus, each gesturing and motioning to others to continue to dance. Apart from Ganpati, we have two more gods. Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom, enters the stage and is greeted by them. And then we have Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, who enters and blesses the play. All of them sing Ganpati Bappa Moria, which is God, Ganpati bless us. This is repeated over and again, and the stage moves with an increasing tempo. There's a frenzy of joy and excitement, very much like a kirtan in temples. During the recital, the voices of the chorus jump to an astounding high pitch. It reaches a peak when Moria, Saraswati, and Lakshmi go off the stage. The first meeting of gods and Brahmins ends on a happy note with the declaration of the Surdhar, good, good, good. It is because of this musical quality that the critics call the play the first Sangeet Natak in the real sense of the term. The first scene introduces us to the people of Pune, which is the focus of this play. Tendulkar has based his play on the history, but molds it in such a way that it becomes relevant to the Indian society today, as it was to the 18th century Pune. The plot of Ghashiram Kotwal is interesting and has a great appeal for the audience. The play is about a North Indian Brahmin from Kannauj, Ghashiram, who comes to Pune at the time when the Peshwa's chief minister Nana Fadnavis was in power. At Pune, he is insulted and humiliated by local people on the false charge of a theft. Ghashiram feels hurt and insulted and vows to take revenge on the local Brahmins when possible. The opportunity comes to him when the lecherous chief minister, the aging Nana Fadnavis, wishes to have sex with his daughter Gauri. In order to please Fadnavis, he agrees to fulfill his desire by letting his daughter be seduced by the chief minister. In return, Ghashiram is made the Kotwal of Pune. Getting this unlimited power, he unleashes a reign of terror on the local Brahmins. He crosses all limits and indulges in all sorts of atrocities. When he goes to the extent of causing death to as many as 22 innocent Brahmins, the situation becomes out of control. What follows next is the downfall of Ghashiram. The Nana, who has used Ghashiram's daughter Gauri for sex, now discards her. And when she becomes pregnant, he gets the abortion done, and in the process, Gauri loses her life. Clever enough, Nana instigates the bloodthirsty crowds to stone Ghashiram to death. The play ends with Nana announcing public festivities for 3 days to mark the death of Ghashiram, that Dim Ghashia, as he called him. What is remarkable in this play is the adept use of Tamasha tradition of folk theatre by Tendulkar. Most important feature is the abundant use of music and songs that he borrows from the folk theatre. The play is full of noise and violence. The aptly placed songs provide the necessary dramatic relief in between tense situations. The introduction of Malhari songs creates a tense atmosphere, whereas Lavani or love songs highlight the sensuous and passionate element. The play Ghashiram Kotwal essentially belongs to the folk type tamasha, which is basically musical, but in which prose dialogues are used to make social and political comments. The sutradhar or the narrator has a bigger role to play as a dramatic tool. The traditional function of the sutradhar is to introduce the characters as well as to comment on the action of the play. Tendulkar makes a distinction by extending and enriching the role of sutradhar from that of a commentator to that of an active participant in the action of the play. When Ghashiram is thrown in the jail, the sutradhar adopts the role of a prisoner and observes. He comments on the social life of Pune. The thief is a simple thief. The police are official thieves. Tendulkar is indirectly commenting on the police in the contemporary times as well, which is as corrupt as it was in the 18th century Pune. Tamasha technique helps the writer to expose the social evils of society. Further, Tendulkar changed the form and pattern of Indian drama by demolishing the 3-act play and created exciting new models that bridge the gap between traditional and modern theatre. This was about Maharashtra. Now over to Bengal. In Bengal, Utpal Dutt was the chief exponent of the new drama movement, who made a significant contribution through his Jatra plays. The new theatre movement finally developed itself into the third theatre in the 70s in the hands of Badal Sircar. In fact, Badal Sircar added a new dimension to the contemporary Indian drama by making the audience share a new experience, that of the internal world of psyche. He focused on the middle class people and criticized them for being too self-centered and materialistic. His chief concern was to show the futility of modern life. He realized that most of the people were leading complacent and routine lives. He finds fault with the life of the middle class who indulge in activities which are totally absurd. The entire movement of their life is circular, and there being no change in their life system, there was no forward movement. As a matter of fact, Badal Sircar was a versatile writer who had traveled extensively in Europe and understood all the intricacies of real, genuine theatres. In 1971, he decided to write for Angan Manch Arena theatre. In fact, the idea of new theatre struck him in the year 1958, when he says he went to Europe and there he saw a new kind of theatre where it was circular. People were standing all around. And he says, I first saw theater in round in Europe. Perhaps this gave him an idea of open theater that he launched later, based on Indian thus developed a new art form to illustrate the feelings of the common people. With this day-to-day problems of daily life gained a dimension in Indian theatre. The distinctive quality of Sarkar's plays lies in the fact that they appeal to the mind of the audience. There is no need for stage paraphernalia like sets, costumes, lights, sounds, etc. Sarkar shakes off all the conventions of the traditional drama. His plays were often performed in the public area and challenged the conventions of Indian theatre. In this respect, he was highly inspired by the tradition of folk theatre. His plays even Indrajit is a tale of a playwright who struggles painfully to write the play. I think most of people have read Evam Indrajit. Evam means and. The play explores the writing process and search for inspiration and something exciting to motivate creation. The play begins with a simple setting. Here is a table with a huge pile of papers. Sitting on the chair is the writer. He is back to the audience. He is in search of a play. He is simply scribbling on paper without any food or drink. His mother repeatedly comes on the stage asking him to eat his dinner. He is not able to write anything because he has nothing to write about. Instead, he focuses on the audience of the play. He becomes angry and tears of the papers in his hand. Fully frustrated, he says, this is an absurd play. So he's himself fully frustrated and says, what should I write? This is the first scene. What should I write? What shall I write about? How many people I know? And what do I know about them? I know nothing about the suffering masses, nothing about the toiling people. There is nothing about the poor and tribals. There is no beauty in the people around me. He says he has no stuff to write about. What does he write about? He wants to write about poor people, about genuine people, about the real people. But he says there is no audience of that kind there. Not finding a suitable theme or characters, the writer suddenly turns towards the audience and calls out 4 latecomers to the stage. People were pouring in because it was open theater. So the last 4 onlookers who came, he asked them to come to the stage. As the 4 give their names, Amal, Vimal, Kamal, and Nirmal, he does not accept the name of 4, namely Nirmal. He means here Badal Sircar. He says, it can't be you. He is addressing Nirmal. You must have another name. You have to have. Tell me truly, what is your name? Your name. The 4th boy ultimately confesses to having shied away from his real name. He is not Nirmal, he says, but Indrajit, the name of a mythical rebel, Meghnad, who defeated Lord Indra. Indrajit says he hides his identity as he is diffident. The loss of childhood and coming of age had changed his view of life, and he had lost all the confidence. From that moment, the writer begins to write his play, to explore for some meaning in Indrajit's life as it grew through his college days. His youthful love for a girl and his rebellion against the social and moral conventions. He is revealed to be a common man who was born, got schooling, worked at the same place, following a routine life. The following conversation between the writer and Indrajit illustrates this point. The dialogues that I'm going to read, they are typical of an absurd play where nothing happens. There's no action, only dialogues. And those dialogues are also meaningless. They are just waste of time. So the writer, he asks Indrajit, where were you born? Indrajit says, in Calcutta. Writer, education. Indrajit, Calcutta. Writer, work. Indrajit, Calcutta. Writer, death. Indrajit, not dead yet. Writer, are you sure? Indrajit, no, I'm not so sure. All these dialogues are repetitive and cynical. Nothing indeed happens in the play. No action, quite typical of an absurd play. The writer continues his search for something dynamic in this mechanical, stale and standstill world. He puts long series of questions which are apparently absurd but strong enough to disturb the audience. He, after having dialogue with Indrajit, he addresses the audience. He addresses the gallery. He says, why should you sneeze? Why should you cough? Why should you smile? And why should you laugh? Why should you sulk? And why should you sigh? Everybody does it. That is why. Why should you love? Why should you hate? Why should you suffer and blame it on fate? Why should you weep and why should you cry? Everybody does it. That is why. That is why. Then he says finally, why should you always sleep in the night? Why should you always try to be right? Why should you live? Why should you die? Everybody does it. That is why. That is why. He asks the number of questions that he puts to the audience. He says that I've been asking people, why do you do this and that? But the answer is, we do it because everybody does it. As the play reaches its final act, Indrajit attempts to seek meaning in exploring the world. He travels to London, but finds the world just as unsatisfactory as it was in Calcutta. He soon thinks of committing suicide, but realizes he is incapable of this as well. Towards the end, we see Indrajit as a mature person. The nagging question of why still bothers him. He wants to know, why do we do the things the way we do? The play ends without finding any solution. Indrajit comes to realize that the past and present are two ends of a single rope. There is no reconciliation. The solution is to accept the absurdity of life and yet carry on with it. No way out. The tradition of absurd drama continues in Indian literature. Mohan Rakesh's Hindi play Adhe, Adhure is the best example in this regard. It has been translated into English as Halfway House. The play begins with a prologue that depicts a disorderly living room of once a well-to-do middle-class family. A man in the black suit is sitting on the sofa, smoking a cigar. The man introduces himself as one who cannot be identified with any name or character. He has no role in the play. This is the tradition of an absurd play. He serves the purpose of chorus and says the play is as undefined as I am. This is a typical statement of a absurd play. So he says the play is as undefined as I am. This reminds us of Indrajit in Indrajit, the play, who is not able to locate his identity. All action takes place in the house of Mahendranath in his drawing room. This is Adhe Adhure. It shows the life of a family during 26 hours when Savitri returns from office till the next day when her husband Mahendranath too returns. And exhausted, Savitri criticizes the unhelpful attitude of other members of her family. She is a woman divided against herself, an ambitious, schizophrenic woman who represents the larger dimensions of urban middle class. The future of the institution of marriage is depicted through the unsuccessful life of Mahendranath and Savitri. This is husband and wife. They are having tug of wars, discussing, arguing over every little point in life. They have differences and they cannot make peace with each other. Mahendra is unemployed, but Savitri is working and also has extramarital relations with other men. The grim future of the institution of marriage is depicted through the unsuccessful life of Mahendra and Savitri. They do not wish to stay together. Though they do not wish to stay together, they go astray only to return back home finally. There is no way out. There is no escape. There is no escape from hell. The play depicts the changing position of women in Indian society. During the 60s and 70s, a new awakening had dawned upon the women folk of India. Women became aware of their independent existence, started moving out of the confines of the home, resulting in gender interaction with men and the evolution of a new relationship between opposite sexes. The foundations of marriage as an institution started shaking, generating a revolt against the traditional role of keeping a marriage going at any cost. The female partner started asserting for a room of her own. Savitri is representative of this emerging middle-class society. It may be pertinent to point out that in this play, Rakesh Mohan gives expression to some of his own experiences in life. He had an unhappy married life. He married thrice. After the first two divorces, he felt alienated and faced predicament over various issues of life. He wondered why people do not throw away the superficial layers covering them. I quote a statement, "Your mind always works like a pendulum between this and that, so that you can't ever relax and you are always tense." In this play, Adhe, Adhure, Half a House, Rakesh dramatizes the existential predicament of the urban middle class whose lives are guided not by love, concern for each other, but by material considerations. Savitri's search for completeness ends in a disaster. Each of the characters in play experiences a sense of alienation, loneliness, and loss of identity. Since all the members are estranged with each other, the home becomes a halfway house. It is not a true home. Search for completeness stays unfulfilled, resulting in disillusionment and frustration. After Badal Sircar, street theatre took a new turn. The shift from the inner world to the outer world. The playwrights now started paying attention to the social life around them. They realized that since drama holds a mirror to life, it can act as a corrective to social evils in the society by conveying a definite message to the audience. The method was very simple, a happy mix of profit with pleasure. In order to swallow the bitter pill of moralizing, it was necessary to find a modus operandi, the method of working. Nukkad Plays was the answer. It followed the tradition of Tamasha on one hand and open theatre of Badal Sircar on the other. Nukkad Plays or street theatre is a popular form of presentation in outdoor spaces without a specific audience and without any payment. These Nukkad Plays or street plays, they have a lot of affinity with the folk theatre. Very simple, no furniture, just pivot is the narrator and there are people around in a circle and they watch the show and they keep clapping, singing, and also sometimes participating in the play. The audience also does it. So nukkad plays or street theatre is a popular form of presentation in outdoor spaces without a specific audience and without any payment, no charges. The performance needs to be in the open to draw crowds. The locations can be anywhere like offices, shopping centers, parks, college grounds, slums, and street corners. It needs no stage and light decorations. There is no microphone or loudspeaker, no amplification of voice. Actors speak at the highest pitch so that they are audible to the audience. Nor do we need veteran actors and actresses. The plays are normally enacted by young boys and girls from schools and colleges, and the themes are not sublime either. They depict ordinary life and issues related to common people. The enacting of nukkad or street plays might sound simple and straightforward, but in reality, there's a serious effort behind them. A writer has to skillfully blend the comic element with a serious message. To stage a play, an appropriate atmosphere is created. To attract the audience, they start playing on dholak or by singing a choral song. When the audience surrounds in a circular position, one actor narrates while others mime. Here we are reminded of the first scene of Ghashiram Kotwal. As these plays done on a low budget, the dressing and furniture have to be kept simple and minimal. There has been an explosion of theatre activity in India as hundreds of plays were enacted to bring about a social revolution. When the emergency was declared by the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, the state theatre entered a new phase. Nukkad plays were enacted throughout the country to protest against the imposition of emergency and against the suppression of the democratic rights of the people. The most notable group that staged street plays merged on the scene was Jan Natya Manch. This was a group founded by Sardar Hashmi. Many of you might be knowing Sardar Hashmi. He was an activist from Delhi and ultimately he was killed. He was an actor, director, organizer, and also professor of English. He taught in Delhi College in Delhi University for 4 years. His play Halla Bol was performed for an audience of 20,000 workers in 1978. We had this kind of folk theatre in olden times where there was no ticket. Anybody could come and watch. Halla Bol was also performed on the same basis. And when Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was accused of rigging the elections, Sardar Hashmi produced a short play, Kursi, 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 as a reaction to the controversy. The play narrates the story of a king whose throne moves with him when he attempts to give it up in favor of an elected representative. The play was performed every day for a week at the Boat Club at India Gate, New Delhi. Just a minute, sorry. Sorry. Last. Now, this, as I was telling you, the nukkad plays or street plays have gained a lot of popularity, and in schools and colleges, there are many such programs where these plays are enacted. They are educative also because there's always a lesson. And in the recent times, there's been a lot of research going on nukkad plays. And we also had a serial, if you watch TV, which was known as Nukkad drama. This was about 15 years ago. Now, since we are all overpopulated and we are not able to afford many big halls. So these street plays have gained further popularity. In a city like Delhi, which has a population of about 2 crores, we do not have more than 5 or 6 theater halls where plays can be enacted, and they are very expensive. So the only way out is these street or nukkad plays. And also there's a lot of scope for the young boys and girls to take part, and these plays are so educative. And Delhi, we have a certain group which enacts plays on every Sunday in Karnad Place, New Delhi, and they are very educated. Sometimes they talk about this COVID and the precautions that should. It is done in such a way that it becomes in 2 episodes. A lot of people gather around and they enjoy the play, and also they get a lesson. And some time ago, North Railway also hired a certain group which performed at metro stations, guiding the passengers as to how to board the train, and also telling them that if they don't follow the rules, they'll be punished. But it is done in such a clever fashion that people do not realize that they are getting message. They enjoy the entertainment in it. So this way, folk theatre has become very important, beginning with olden times, when it started with folk tales, then folk theatre, and finally next to that, when fiction became very important in 19th century, the playwrights, they paid full attention to drama, but they did not want to follow European drama. So they thought of blending the two together, folk theatre and European drama. And the result is the street plays, nukkad plays. Thank you very much.